everyone. It's Father George. Deacon Bob and I are here at church. We celebrated Mass together today on what is traditionally called Good Shepherd Sunday. The fourth Sunday of Easter is known as Good Shepherd Sunday because every year there's a reading from the Gospel about Jesus being our Good Shepherd. So I find that a very comforting symbol. In my own room in the rectory, I have a large picture of Jesus as the Good Shepherd. So this is a very ancient image of God. We see in the Old Testament that God continually says that he is the shepherd of his people Israel. Today at Mass, our responsorial psalm was Psalm 23, "The Lord is my shepherd, we know it well," and we find it very comforting. So on this Good Shepherd Sunday, we have that comforting image of Jesus as our Good Shepherd. He is kind, he is compassionate, he is caring. He understands the difficulties that we are experiencing right now, and he holds us in his arms. And we recognize his voice. His voice is one of gentleness and care and compassion. So from a very young age, hopefully we have learned to listen for the voice of God in our lives so that we become attuned to Jesus' voice. So that when we hear voices that don't quite sound right, then we are able to judge whether something is really good or not so good that we've heard. And so we keep our hearts attuned, our spiritual ears, if you will, attuned to the voice of Jesus, our Good Shepherd. So as we go through this pandemic, and please God, it looks like there is some light at the end of the tunnel. Nevertheless, sometimes I hear people say perhaps God is punishing us. I'm not real comfortable with that image because when we think of punishment, we think of it in human terms, of really being harsh with someone. And I believe that God does not punish us in our human way of thinking. Nevertheless, the scriptures tell us, in Romans especially, that the way in which God punishes, so to speak, is that he lets us do what we want. So, very often we don't want to do what God wants us to do. We want to do what we ourselves want to do, to kind of figure it out on our own, to go by our own wisdom or what we're comfortable with. And so at times God allows us to go with that until eventually we recognize that we are going perhaps in the wrong direction. We're saying and doing the wrong things, and it brings unhappiness to our lives. And so in that way, hopefully God in his love calls us back to himself and to his way. But I do believe that God allows us during difficult times to be disciplined. God perhaps tests us, if you will, but again, not in the human sense of testing. When we think of having a test, we think of being back in school maybe in the fourth grade, and the teacher is aware that we're not really paying attention, so she calls a pop quiz and we get tested and we find out what we don't know. But God doesn't test us in that way, but rather God allows us to be tested so that we can understand what we do know, what we don't know about ourselves, so that we do know what we can do. Even in bad times like this, we recognize that we can do tremendous good. Many of us have been doing things that we never thought we would be able to do, to take care of people, and we didn't think we'd be able to do that. So in a sense, we can be tested in bad times, and we can find out what we are capable of, and how many doctors and nurses and first responders, policemen, how many of them have found out that they can do tremendous things, even sacrificially. Many of them put their own lives on the line. And so we find out what we are capable of, but at the same time as well, we find out what we can't do by our own strength. And so God tests us so that we recognize that there are things that we cannot do in our human weakness, and we need the strength of God. We need the help of God. So hopefully this is the way in which we have been tested by God, to see what we are capable of doing, to understand that what we can't do, God supplies his grace and his strength. And in the end, we understand that there are things that we have to give up. It can be very uncomfortable when we go through a time of discipline or testing. I'm not belittling that. Certainly it is very, very difficult. So many have lost their jobs. Children are not able to go to school. We're not able to come to Mass. We're not able to gather with our loved ones. And when and if death comes, then we have to meet that, and that's extremely painful and difficult. And it's only worse when we're not allowed to be with our loved one if they're in the hospital, if they have COVID-19. It's very difficult not to have a funeral mass and a gathering. I believe I said this to you the last time. The only thing that we can do as priests is to go to the graveside and with just a few family members offer prayers. But that's a good thing too, because we recognize that we're not in this world forever. We recognize that this life is passing and that it's brief, but God has something wonderful prepared for us in heaven. And so while it's difficult to go through that and to let go, we know that those who have gone before us are in those in those fields where the Good Shepherd is reigning and where love reigns supreme. So that's why St. Paul tells us that eye has not seen, ear has not heard, nor has it so much as dawned upon us what God has prepared for us. So we continue to follow the guidelines to the best of our ability. I believe that as Christians, that's part of loving our neighbor, to do what we're supposed to do to protect one another. And so continue to be faithful to Holy Mass as you see it on EWTN or with our bishop from the cathedral, to be faithful to your daily prayer, to recognize, especially in this month of May. May is the month that's traditionally dedicated to our Blessed Mother, and so we know that her prayers, her love, her concern are with us, and that she takes all of our heartache, all of our sadness, all of our difficulties, all of our worries, all of that she takes to Jesus along with our prayers. And so we trust in Jesus, our Good Shepherd. So just a couple of things to address to you directly. Some people have asked various questions. Some of those questions I don't have the answer to. For instance, whether we will have summer intense for religious ed, we don't know that, because as yet we don't know if we'll be able to gather in groups for the summer. And so I don't know the answer to that. I do know that, of course, we are going to celebrate confirmation in the fall, and we will also celebrate First Holy Communion in the fall. So the bishop actually sent me a letter saying, please let everyone know that we will have the sacrament of confirmation. He's eager to come and confirm our young people. Bishop Sullivan is just tremendously concerned about our young people and wants to be here and looks forward to being here for confirmation. And of course, I look forward to First Holy Communion in the parish. It will happen. And so as soon as we know that we are able to do it, we will celebrate those sacraments. Certainly with other religious ed information that I'm not aware of, Dee may be aware of that, so she will probably be putting something out on the internet as well, so that you are aware of what's going on with religious education. And finally, just again, another heartfelt thank you for all that you've done for the food pantry. As I've said, so many people are out of work, so many people are experiencing food shortages, so they turn to the food pantries. And so that call has gone out, and we'll continue to do that. Ginny Baker is doing a wonderful job with the food pantry, and you're doing a wonderful job keeping it supplied. She told me that in the past month, we've donated over 1,600 pounds of food to the food pantry. That's almost twice what we normally do. So thank you, thank you, thank you for that. It gives the grace of God to so many people in such a wonderful way to know that they're able to feed themselves and their families. So we appreciate that, and we continue to offer our prayers for you and with you, and we miss you. We love you, and we miss you. And for those who have lost loved ones to COVID-19, know that our prayers and our hearts go out to you. And for those who are sick, we pray for you. and those who are taking care of those who are sick. We hear this constantly on television and through social media, that we have to look out for each other and care for each other. So continue to do that. By God's grace, we'll be back together in the not too distant future. So Deacon Bob is here. He's going to finish up by just saying a few words and saying hello. And before I go, just Bishop, Deacon Mike says a word of thanks to everyone who's prayed for his mom has passed away. As you know, they were unable to even do graveside because she was buried in the military cemetery. So it's very, very hard, but he appreciates your love, your concern, and your prayer. So Deacon Bob.
Thank you, Father. Hello, everyone. Good morning, afternoon, evening, whenever you're watching this. I just had one brief reflection about the gospel today. You think about those, the sheep and the shepherd, and the sheep coming into that fold at the end of the night. It's rock outcroppings with a little space for them to come in and go out. And I think that overnight there's a great storm, and there's lots of thunder and lightning, and sheep are scared. And I see myself as one of those sheep, and I'm pretty clever, so I'll find a nice place under a rock, something between two outcroppings where it's dry and maybe warm. And I feel like that's how I am a lot during this coronavirus challenge, is I feel like I'm self-protecting and I'm concerned about the storm outside. And I need to remember that in that morning, after that storm is over, or in this case, while the storm's still going on, that voice of the shepherd is calling me. And I want to be attentive to that voice and to be able to go out. I met this week with the executive mentor from where I work. And he spent some time with me, and one of his favorite expressions, do the next right thing. Do the next right thing. Do something good. Do one thing good. And I think that it's important, as, maybe like me, you feel a little like huddling and hiding a bit, that we listen to the voice of Jesus, and that he's calling us to do that next right thing, and calling us out into the pastures where we can be fed spiritually, where we can be close to him. And I ask you to consider that and to look for his voice in your life. God bless you. Have a great day. I want to let you know that my mom had a pretty good week. She did have one rough day with COVID, and since then her symptoms have been very mild. There were 4 other people in where she lives who have died from the disease, so obviously please keep all of them in your prayers. And I can't wait for us all to be together again. Have a great day.